He thought money revealed the worst in people. One card, one day, unlimited power. What she chose to buy shattered everything he believed about poverty, kindness, and control. And in less than an hour, a single receipt would change both of their lives forever. Brennan Ashford had learned early that faith in people was expensive. At 37, he was the CEO of Ashford Global Industries, a pharmaceutical empire valued at over $11 billion. He lived high above Boston Harbor in a glass penthouse filled with rare art, imported stone, and silence so deep it echoed. His watches cost more than most annual salaries. His calendar was booked months ahead, yet every morning he woke with the same dull pressure in his chest, like he was slowly suffocating in a room full of air. His father, Montgomery Ashford, had made sure of that emptiness. "Trust is a currency fools spend freely," his father used to say. "The desperate will take everything and still ask for more, especially the poor." That belief had shaped Brennan's entire life. Every donation he made was filtered through attorneys. Every act of generosity was calculated, measured, and protected. He gave to causes, not people, numbers, not faces. Poverty was something he discussed in boardrooms, not something he looked in the eye. Until one January morning cracked that certainty wide open. Brennan was late. An emergency board meeting had investors on edge, and his phone vibrated non-stop as he moved quickly through Back Bay Station. His assistant trailed behind him, rattling off reminders. His coat was Italian wool. His briefcase held contracts worth tens of millions. Then he saw her. She sat against the cold tile wall near the Orange Line entrance, bundled in layers that didn't quite fit. A small girl slept curled in her lap, wrapped in a donated coat far too large for her body. The woman's arms were locked around the child like a shield, as if love alone could keep out the cold. Beside them rested a piece of cardboard with shaky black lettering. "Single mother, lost our home, anything helps, God bless." Brennan stopped walking. His assistant nearly collided with him. "Mr. Ashford, we have 9 minutes." "Wait here," he said, his voice distant. He didn't know why he turned back. Homeless people were everywhere. This wasn't rare, this wasn't unique, and yet something rooted him to the floor. As he approached, the woman looked up. There was no performance in her eyes, no practiced plea, just exhaustion so deep it felt permanent. Her lips were cracked from winter wind. Her hands were rough but clean. Dignity clung to her despite everything else being stripped away. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "We're not bothering anyone. We can move." That apology hit him harder than any failed deal ever had. "What's your name?" Brennan asked, kneeling despite the filth of the floor. She blinked, surprised. Sutton Reeves." Her arms tightened instinctively. "Indy, she just turned 6. Brennan studied Sutton's face. There was intelligence there, education. This wasn't someone who had always lived like this. This was someone who had fallen. "How long?" he asked. Her eyes dropped. 5 months. 5 months. A 6-year-old sleeping on subway floors while thousands passed by every day. His assistant cleared her throat impatiently, but Brennan raised a hand without looking back. His father's voice echoed in his mind. Desperation makes thieves of everyone. Maybe it was time to test that belief. Brennan reached into his wallet. Sutton's gaze followed, cautious, expectant. She probably assumed a few bills at most. Instead, he pulled out a sleek black credit card, platinum-edged, unrestricted. Her breath caught. "Take it," he said. She stared at the card like it might explode. "I don't understand." "It's yours for 24 hours, Brennan said steadily. "No limit, no conditions." Her hands trembled. "This has to be a trick." "I want to see something," he replied. "I want to know if what I was taught is true." He placed the card in her palm. Her fingers were ice cold. "Why me?" she whispered. Brennan glanced at Indy, sleeping peacefully despite everything. "Because I'm tired of assumptions." He stood. "I'll be back here tomorrow morning." As he walked away, his father's voice followed him. "You're a fool." But another voice asked something quieter. "What if you're wrong?" Sutton remained frozen long after Brennan disappeared into the moving crowd. The card lay heavy in her palm, its surface cold, unreal. People streamed past her as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. Someone laughed. A train screeched to a halt. Life continued without pause, while hers felt like it had slipped into another dimension entirely. She stared down at Indy. The child's breathing was shallow but steady, her small chest rising and falling beneath layers of mismatched clothing. A strand of hair from her daughter's forehead and swallowed hard. This wasn't hope. Hope had failed her too many times. This was danger. Her first instinct was to refuse it, to chase after the man and shove the card back into his expensive coat pocket. Nothing good ever came without a price. Every shelter taught you that. Every kind stranger eventually expected something in return. But then Indy stirred, letting out a small cough that rattled in her chest. Sutton closed her eyes. "Just food," she whispered to herself. "Just warmth." She lifted Indy carefully and walked up the station steps, emerging into air so cold it burned her lungs. The city lights blurred as tears threatened to spill. She wiped them away quickly. Crying was a luxury she could no longer afford. The first place she entered wasn't a store, it was a pharmacy. The automatic doors slid open, releasing a wave of warm air, scented with antiseptic and detergent. Sutton headed straight for the pediatric aisle. She didn't rush. She read labels, she checked dosages, fever reducer, cough medicine, vitamins. A small humidifier she'd once owned when things were different. At the register she hesitated as the cashier scanned each item. The total climbed past numbers she hadn't seen in months. "Will that be cash or—" "Card," Sutton said quietly, holding out the black rectangle. The machine beeped. "Approved." Her knees nearly gave out. Outside she sat on a bench and stared at the receipt as if it were proof she hadn't imagined everything. Indy woke fully this time, blinking against the lights. "Mommy?" she murmured. Sutton forced a smile. "Hey, baby, you're warm now." They moved through the city slowly after that. Sutton avoided luxury storefronts and glittering displays. Instead, she found a modest clothing store. She picked out practical things: jeans, socks, underwear, a coat that actually fit Indy's small frame. Nothing flashy, nothing unnecessary. Still, with every swipe of the card, fear tightened around her ribs. What if it stopped working? What if this was some cruel experiment? What if he came back angry? Near sunset, Sutton stood across the street from a hotel. Not a palace, just clean, safe. The kind with soft yellow lights in the windows and families passing through unnoticed. She stood there for a long time. Indy squeezed her hand. "Are we in trouble?" "No," Sutton said softly. "We're just resting tonight." Inside, the clerk barely glanced at her. No questions, no judgment. Just a key card slid across the counter. The room smelled like soap and clean sheets. Sutton sat on the bed and pressed her face into the blanket, shaking silently. Indy bounced once, twice, then collapsed beside her, laughing. That laugh broke something open in Sutton's chest. Later that night, after Indy fell asleep with her hair still damp from a real shower, Sutton sat at the small desk beneath the lamp. The card rested beside a growing stack of receipts. She studied them, fingers tracing each printed line. She could do more. She could disappear. The thought tempted her for exactly 3 seconds. Then she remembered Brennan's eyes. Not suspicious, not cruel, but tired, like someone who had lost something long ago and didn't know how to name it. Sutton opened her phone and began making calls. Not to spend, to plan. By midnight, she had done something Brennan Ashford never expected. She had used his money to pay down debt that wasn't hers. At a community shelter downtown, overdue utility balances kept families from moving into available units. Sutton paid 3 of them in full. She donated anonymously to a women's legal aid fund that had once helped her file restraining orders she couldn't afford. She bought no jewelry, no luxuries, no escape. Just stability, just dignity. She placed every receipt neatly into an envelope. On the front, she wrote his name carefully, Ashford. Then she set her alarm for dawn. Brennan hadn't planned on checking the account activity. He told himself that repeatedly as he stared at the city skyline from his office window. The board meeting had dissolved into noise, arguments about stock volatility, risk exposure, quarterly projections. Normally, he thrived in this environment. Numbers were clean, predictable. They didn't lie to you the way people did. Yet his attention kept drifting back to a woman on a subway floor and a credit card that should not matter to him. By the time the meeting adjourned, the sky had darkened. His assistant handed him a tablet with the usual reports. Instead of opening them, Brennan unlocked his phone and opened the banking app. He froze. The first charge wasn't what he expected. A pharmacy, not a luxury retailer, not electronics, not a flight, just medicine, children's medicine, over-the-counter basics, the kind of purchases that didn't scream indulgence but whispered necessity. Brennan scrolled. Clothing, modest, affordable brands, no designer labels, no excess. His jaw tightened. The next charge made him sit down. A hotel. He exhaled slowly, unsure why disappointment pricked his chest. Of course she would want a bed, anyone would. His father's voice stirred again, smug and satisfied. See? Comfort first. But then he kept scrolling. Utility payments, not 1, 3. Each marked with different account numbers, different names. Brennan leaned forward, heart picking up speed. These weren't her bills. The amounts were too specific, too calculated. Someone had intentionally cleared balances, preventing families from moving into housing. He felt something unfamiliar twist inside him. "Run an audit," he said abruptly. His assistant blinked. "On what, sir?" "Those utility payments. Find the organizations tied to them." Within minutes, confirmation arrived. Community shelter, transitional housing program, women's legal aid fund. Brennan stared at the screen like it had accused him personally. She wasn't spending. She was fixing. Every purchase formed a pattern, one he had never seen among the wealthy donors he courted daily. They wanted plaques, press, recognition. Sutton wanted invisibility. The clock on his wall read 11:47 p.m. Brennan should have been angry. He should have felt manipulated. That was the script his father wrote for moments like this. Instead, he felt ashamed. He remembered all the times he'd approved 7-figure donations that took months to materialize, trapped in committees and branding discussions. Sutton had accomplished more good in 12 hours than some of his foundations had in a year. He opened the camera feeds of the hotel chain his company partially owned. It took seconds to locate the room. Sutton sat at a desk under a lamp, shoulders hunched, sorting receipts with care. Not fear, care. Brennan closed the feed. Something in him shifted, quietly but permanently. At dawn, he arrived back at the subway station earlier than planned. The city yawned awake around him. Coffee carts opened. Commuters flooded in. Sutton was already there. She stood this time, Indy bundled beside her, hair neatly braided. When she saw him, her spine straightened. She stepped forward and held out an envelope with both hands. "I didn't take everything," she said quickly. "I kept every receipt. You can check." "I already did," Brennan said. Her face drained of color. "I can explain." "No," he interrupted gently. "You already did." She hesitated, confused. "You didn't buy what I expected," he continued. "You didn't act the way I was taught people like you would." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't look away. "People like me." Brennan winced. "I'm sorry, that wasn't fair." He looked at Indy, who studied him with open curiosity. "You bought safety," Brennan said quietly, "for more than just yourself." Sutton swallowed. "I was afraid you'd think I stole." Brennan shook his head. "You gave—" Silence settled between them, thick and strange. "What happens now?" Sutton asked. Brennan stared down at the envelope in his hands, then back at her. Now came the moment that would either reinforce everything he believed or destroy it completely. Brennan didn't answer right away. He glanced around the station, the chipped tiles, the hum of fluorescent lights, the ordinary cruelty of a place where thousands passed through without seeing anyone. For years, he had moved through spaces like this, untouched, insulated by money and momentum. Now, standing here with Sutton and her daughter, the air felt heavier, more real. "Now," he said finally, "I stopped pretending this was an experiment." Sutton frowned. "Then what was it?" A mirror, Brennan replied. One I didn't know I needed. She stiffened instinctively. I don't want charity. I know, he said. That's why I'm not offering it. He gestured toward the exit. Can we talk somewhere warmer? Somewhere Indy doesn't have to listen to adults trying to change the world? Indy looked up at her mother. I'm good at not listening. Sutton almost smiled. They walked to a nearby cafe. Nothing fancy, just chipped mugs and the smell of burnt espresso. Brennan ordered 3 drinks without asking. Hot chocolate for Indy, black coffee for Sutton, espresso for himself. Sutton wrapped her hands around the cup like it might disappear. You paid off debts that weren't yours, Brennan said once they sat. Why? She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze drifted to the window, where people hurried past with heads down. Because someone once did it for me, she said, and I never got the chance to say thank you. Brennan leaned back, absorbing that. What happened to you? He asked. Sutton's jaw tightened. A marriage that looked perfect from the outside, a husband who controlled money, paperwork, access. When I left, he left me with nothing but legal fees and a kid who thought sleeping in cars was normal. Brennan felt heat rise behind his eyes. And no one helped? They tried, she said, but help comes with forms and waiting lists and rules. When you're already drowning, time is a luxury. Silence stretched. Brennan thought of his father again, of the lectures about discipline and merit and survival of the smartest. He wondered how many Suttons had been dismissed as failures because the system was too slow to catch them. I run foundations, he said, big ones, but they move like glaciers. Sutton met his eyes. People freeze while they're moving. That sentence landed harder than any accusation could have. I want to do something different, Brennan said slowly. Not for publicity, not for tax write-offs. She stiffened again. I won't be your success story. I don't want one, he replied. I want a partner. Her brow furrowed. In what? Fixing the gap, he said. Between money and people who need it now, not in 6 months. Sutton shook her head. I don't have anything to offer you. Brennan smiled faintly. You already showed me you do. He slid a card across the table. Not a credit card, a business card. Ashford Rapid Relief Initiative. No board approvals, he explained. No committees, small teams, fast action. You'd help design it. Sutton stared at the card like it was heavier than the platinum one had been. I don't have a degree, she said. I don't have a resume. You have lived experience, Brennan said, and integrity. Both are rare. Indy sipped her hot chocolate and looked between them. Are we getting a house? Sutton's breath caught. Brennan answered gently. We're getting you stability. He stood. No pressure, I'll give you time. But whether you say yes or no, this doesn't end today. Sutton clutched the card, torn between fear and something dangerous. Hope. Brennan expected resistance. He just didn't expect how fast it would come. The first call arrived before noon. His chief financial officer, voice tight, words clipped. Brennan, there's chatter, internal. You moved 7 figures without board approval. I know, Brennan said calmly. This isn't a discretionary bonus or a silent acquisition, the CFO pressed. This is charity. No, Brennan replied. It's infrastructure. The line went quiet. By evening, the emails followed. Advisors, legal teams, PR consultants, all variations of the same message wrapped in professional concern. This is risky. This sets a precedent. You're emotionally compromised. Brennan shut his laptop. For the first time in his life, he didn't care about precedent. Across the city, Sutton sat on the edge of the hotel bed, the business card resting in her palm. Indy slept beside her, one arm wrapped around Stella the elephant, chest rising and falling in a rhythm Sutton hadn't seen in months. Safe sleep. The kind that didn't involve listening for footsteps. She thought about Brennan's words, partner, integrity, fixing the gap. She laughed softly to herself. 5 months ago, her biggest decision had been which shelter had space. Now a billionaire was asking her to help redesign how help worked. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. This is Sutton. It's Brennan, came his voice. I wanted to check in, no pressure. She exhaled. You picked a bad time to be polite. He smiled on the other end. She could hear it. That's most of my life. She told him about her fear, about how hope felt heavier than hunger, how saying yes felt like tempting fate. "I don't want Indy thinking miracles just happen," she said. "I want her to know survival takes work." "Then let her see you build something," Brennan replied, "not receive it." Silence. Then Sutton said quietly, "Okay, I'll help, but we do it my way." Brennan closed his eyes. Relief washed through him. "Deal," he said. "Tell me how." 3 days later, Ashford Rapid Relief opened its first pilot office in a borrowed co-working space. No signage, no press. Just 3 desks, a coffee machine and a whiteboard filled with handwritten rules Sutton insisted on. Rule 1, no waiting lists longer than 48 hours. Rule 2, no humiliation paperwork. Rule 3, children eat first always. The first case came within hours. A veteran sleeping in his truck after a medical bankruptcy. A woman fleeing an abusive home with 2 toddlers. A college student couch surfing while holding down 2 jobs. Brennan watched Sutton work. She didn't speak like a caseworker. She spoke like someone who had been there. She asked the questions systems forgot to ask. Where do you feel safest? What scares you most at night? What would tomorrow look like if today didn't crush you? Money moved fast. Hotel rooms, temporary housing, legal fees, childcare deposits. And something unexpected happened. People stabilized. Not forever, not magically, but enough to breathe, enough to stand. Then the backlash went public. A business blog ran a headline: "Billionaire savior complex or reckless philanthropy?" Comment sections ignited. "He's being manipulated. She's playing him. This will end badly." Brennan read every word. Then he went home and stared at the city from his penthouse, feeling something strange. Peace. At the pilot office the next morning, Sutton found a brick through the window. No message. Just shattered glass and fear. Indy was there that day, coloring quietly in the corner. Sutton froze. Brennan arrived minutes later. One look at her face and he understood. "I'm sorry," he said. She shook her head. "This is what happens when you matter." He nodded. "Then we matter enough to protect it." He paid for security, quietly, discreetly. And that night, as Sutton tucked Indy into bed, her daughter asked, "Mama, are we in trouble?" Sutton brushed her hair back. "No, baby, we're doing something important." Indy yawned. "Important things are scary." "Yes," Sutton whispered, "but they're worth it. The past doesn't knock. It waits." Sutton realized that the morning she saw his name on the intake form. Daniel Reeves, her ex-husband. Her breath stalled. The room felt suddenly too small, the air too thin. She hadn't spoken his name out loud in nearly 2 years, not since the night she grabbed Indy, a diaper bag, and ran barefoot down 3 flights of stairs without looking back. "Do you know him?" the intake coordinator asked gently. "Yes," Sutton said, "unfortunately." Daniel sat in the waiting area, thinner than she remembered, jaw tight, eyes restless. Not homeless in the traditional sense. He had a jacket, clean shoes, the kind of man who looked fine until you listened long enough. Their eyes met. Recognition flashed, then anger, then something worse. Ownership. "You work here now?" he said later, voice low. "Figures." Sutton stood straight. "This is a professional space. If you need help, you'll be treated like anyone else." Daniel laughed softly. "You always did like pretending you're in control." That night, Sutton didn't sleep. She watched Indy breathe, every fear she'd buried crawling back to the surface. Daniel had never hit her, not once. He didn't have to. Control lived in words, in money withheld, in isolation, in reminding her she was nothing without him. The next morning, Brennan noticed immediately. "You're different," he said quietly. "What happened?" She told him everything. The marriage, the manipulation, the slow erosion of self, the threats disguised as concern, the way Daniel had tracked her shelters once before. Brennan listened without interruption. When she finished, he said one sentence. "He will not touch your life again." She shook her head. "You can't buy your way out of this." "I'm not going to," Brennan replied. "I'm going to protect it." Daniel returned 2 days later. This time he brought paperwork. Custody claims. False statements. Allegations. The system moved fast when the right language was used. Sutton was served papers at work. Her hands shook so badly she dropped them. Brennan found her sitting on the floor of the supply room, arms wrapped around her knees. "He's going to take her," she whispered. That's what he always said, that no matter where I ran, he'd take her back. Brennan knelt in front of her, steady, grounded. "Look at me," he said. She did. "You survived him once with nothing. This time you're not alone." He made calls, not to silence anyone, but to build a wall of truth. Legal advocates, domestic abuse specialists, trauma-informed attorneys, and something Sutton hadn't expected. Other women Daniel had discarded, manipulated, controlled. They came forward. Stories echoed hers like broken mirrors. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Daniel sat smug at first, confident. Then the testimonies began. By the end, he wouldn't meet Sutton's eyes. The judge's voice was firm. Full custody remains with the mother. Supervised visitation denied pending further review. Sutton collapsed into Brennan's arms outside the courthouse, sobbing the kind of sobs that come from release, not fear. "I thought I lost everything once," she said. "I didn't realize I was just shedding dead weight." Brennan smiled softly. "You didn't just escape, you exposed him." That night, Sutton told Indy the truth in gentle pieces. "We're safe," she said, "and we always will be." Indy nodded seriously. "Bad people don't like light." "No," Sutton said, "they don't." Ashford Rapid Relief expanded after that, not because of money, because of trust. Sutton added a new rule to the wall. Rule 4, survivors lead. And Brennan, watching her stand taller than he'd ever seen her, realized something quietly profound. This wasn't charity. This was legacy. The backlash didn't come quietly. It never does when power feels threatened. The first call came from Brennan's board chairman at 7:12 a.m., voice clipped, controlled, dangerous. "We need to talk about your side project." Brennan didn't pretend ignorance. "It's not a side project. It's an unapproved liability," the chairman snapped. "You're redirecting resources. You're attaching the Ashford name to unvetted individuals. This isn't philanthropy. It's reckless." Brennan looked through the glass walls of his office at the city below. For years, this view had represented success. Now it just looked distant. "Those unvetted individuals are people who fell through systems we profit from," Brennan said. "If that makes us uncomfortable, maybe that's the point." Silence. "Then you're compromising investor confidence." "No," Brennan replied. "I'm challenging it." The emergency board meeting was scheduled within hours. Ashford Global Industries. 47 floors of steel, glass, and carefully managed narratives. Brennan entered the room knowing this would not end cleanly. They came armed with numbers, forecasts, risk assessments, PR implications. One director leaned forward. "You've always been disciplined, Brennan. Don't let sentimentality dismantle what your father built." "That name, Montgomery Ashford." Brennan exhaled slowly. "My father built an empire," he said. "And he built it believing people were disposable." A murmur rippled through the room. "I believed that too," Brennan continued, "until I watched a woman with nothing choose generosity over greed." Another director scoffed. "Anecdotes don't drive markets." "No," Brennan said, "but values drive legacies." He clicked the remote. Photos appeared on the screen. Families rehoused within days instead of months. Medical care delivered before conditions became fatal. Children back in school. Survivors protected before abusers could retaliate. "This initiative didn't drain profits," Brennan said. "It redirected excess, and it created measurable stability." The CFO frowned. "That's not our mandate." Brennan nodded. "That's why I'm changing mine." The room stilled. "I'm stepping down as CEO effective immediately." Voices erupted. "You can't be serious. This will tank the stock." "Think about your father." "I am," Brennan said quietly, for the first time honestly. He slid signed documents onto the table. "I'll remain a shareholder. I'll fund Ashford Rapid Relief independently. No branding, no corporate shield." Someone laughed bitterly. "You're walking away from billions." Brennan smiled, not with pride, but peace. "I already had billions," he said. "What I didn't have was purpose." That evening, he stood in Sutton's apartment doorway again. Indy ran to him, wrapping her arms around his legs. "You came!" "Always," he said. Sutton read his face instantly. "What happened?" "I quit," Brennan said. She froze. "Brennan, it's okay," he assured her. "I didn't lose anything that mattered." They sat at the small kitchen table while Indy colored nearby. "You taught me something." Brennan said softly. That wealth means nothing if it doesn't reduce suffering, and power means nothing if it can't protect. Sutton swallowed. You gave us a future. He shook his head. You gave me one too. Outside, the city hummed, still harsh, still imperfect. But inside that small apartment, something rare existed. Safety, dignity, meaning, and Brennan Ashford knew with absolute certainty that this was the greatest return on investment he would ever make. Sometimes the smallest choices reveal the biggest truths. A single act of trust can dismantle a lifetime of fear. A single moment of kindness can rewrite futures on both sides of the giving. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. If it moved you, challenged you, or reminded you of the good still possible in this world, don't forget to subscribe to LostBlack for more dark, emotional